Nakajako. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit. I will allow Senator Wambua under 1 minute to extend a word welcome to the delegation.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to welcome the visiting delegation, and I wish them well in their engagement with the senators and the staff of the Senate, and I congratulate them for choosing to come to the Senate, which is the upper house of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, where debate is not hindered by any interests other than the service to the great people of this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cheptumo, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that taking into consideration the recommendations of the joint report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security of the National Assembly and the Standing Committee on National Security of the Defense, Foreign Relations of the Senate regarding the proposed deployment of officers of the National Police Service to the Multinational Security Support, MSS, mission for Haiti, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 15th of November, 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 240, Sub-Article 8A of the Constitution, the Senate approves the deployment of officers of the National Police Service to the Multinational Security Support, MSS, mission for Haiti. Mr. Speaker, I will be brief in my moving so that a number of our members will be able to have a moment to contribute to this. Mr. Speaker, Parliament received a request from the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior and National Administration, filed a letter of 19th of October 2023, conveying to Parliament the resolution of the National Security Council to the Speakers of the Senate and National Assembly, seeking the approval by Parliament of the deployment of officers of the National Police Service to multinational security support, MSS, mission for Haiti, pursuant to Article 280, Sub-Article 8A of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, this request emanated from a resolution, and this is very important, Mr. Speaker, resolution number 2699 of 2023 of the United Nations Security Council, adopted on 2nd of October 2023, authorizing a multinational security mission to Haiti under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations. And resolution, Mr. Speaker, of the National Security Council in our country, Minute 29 of 2023 of the National Security Council, seeking Parliament's approval for the deployment of National Police Service to the multinational security MMS support. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important for the House to know that the request, in the request of the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Speaker, indicated that on 13th of October 2023, the National Security Council considered and approved a memorandum from the Cabinet Secretary and the Attorney General of the proposed deployment of officers from National Police Service to multinational support mission. Mr. Speaker, it is important for me to emphasize at this point that the request for Kenya to deploy our police service to Haiti is a resolution of the United Nations Security Council requesting the country, our country, Mr. Speaker, to participate and lead the entire security team support to Haiti. It is be noted, Mr. Speaker, it is not a decision of this House, of this country, on our own motion. We were responding as a country to a resolution of the United Nations, having received a request, Mr. Speaker, from the country of Haiti. Mr. Speaker, sir, following receipt of the request at a sitting of the National Assembly of 25th of October 2023, the Speaker of National Assembly conveyed the message to the House and subsequently committed the same to the relevant committee of National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, sir, at a sitting of this House of 31st of October 2023, you, Mr. Speaker, referred the same matter to Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations. Mr. Speaker, sir, Article 118 on public participation is not an optional provision of our Constitution. We must comply to that particular provision of Article 118, which requires public participation on every issue that comes before this
What
House
is the point of
and the
order,
country, Mr.
Senator
Speaker.
Wambua?
And so, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Cheptumo, just yield. What is the point of order, Senator Wambua?
And the 105 is the Speaker of Standing Orders. The mover of the motion has repeatedly told us that what we are being asked to do did not emanate from us, that it was a resolution of the United Nations Security Council. The Speaker, I would want the mover of the motion to clarify to us, because we want to contribute to this motion, whether the resolution was that Kenya should send troops or officers to Haiti, or whether the resolution was the establishment of a multinational team of officers from across the globe, and that a request then followed to member states of the United Nations. So that we are clear whether the resolution is specific to Kenya sending officers to Haiti.
Senator Wambua, that does not amount to a point of order. It is a point of clarification.
but Mr. Speaker,
Which I believe,
since Mr.
Senator
Speaker,
Cheptumo may proceed.
this is a serious. Allow me just to explain even further. Mr. Speaker, their position, and I think I made it in my
Senator
presentation.
Cheptumo, just hold. Honorable Senators, once the mover has moved and seconded, the issue to be clarified may be clarified at the time he will be replying, when the mover is called upon to reply. So just allow him to move the motion. All those clarifications that we may require, you will certainly have ample time to do that. Proceed, Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I proceed. Mr. Speaker, as I said, that Article 118 of our Constitution requires that public participation be undertaken on matters of this nature, Mr. Speaker. And so the committee jointly placed an advertisement in the print media on Thursday, 3rd of November 2023, inviting the public to submit memoranda of requests. So, Speaker, that advertisement indicated the submissions were to be received by Thursday 9th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, the committee received a memoranda from the Mau Mau War Veterans Association by close of submission deadline. The association proposed that prior to deployment of the officers, Mr. Speaker, the National Police Service to the multinational support, there was need for a national prayer day to be held in Huru Gardens. And Mr. Speaker, this is just a proposal by this body, that as we advance and send our troops to Haiti, it is necessary for us to have a session of prayer and pray for them. And I think it is something that is really important. Mr. Speaker, the committee further held a meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior, National Administration, and Inspector General of Police on 3rd or 9th of November 2023, during which the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Speaker, made his submissions in respect of the request for the proposed deployment of officers to the National Police Service to Haiti. And Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, I want my colleagues, and I believe they have gotten the report of the Joint Committee, Mr. Speaker. Our report, Mr. Speaker, takes a form of 4 chapters. And just to strengthen and to highlight this, Mr. Speaker, chapter 3 talks about the security situation in Haiti. It is important for this House, Mr. Speaker, to note that that Haiti has faced a lot of challenges, Mr. Speaker, over the years, has faced economic, political, and social difficulties. And after assassination of their president, Mr. Speaker, in July 2021, the Prime Minister took over as the president. And Mr. Speaker, since that time, the security situation in Haiti, Mr. Speaker, has not been stable. There has been a lot of killings, a lot of harassment of the population, and so on. It is important for this House to note chapter 3. Mr. Speaker, in that very chapter again, we were able to look at the consideration of the request of the United Nations Security Council. Mr. Speaker, that is now where my brother Wambua was trying to find out. Mr. Speaker, the resolution to deploy security forces to Haiti is a resolution of the United Nations Security Council. And what, Mr. Speaker, the UN did was to request support from the member states. And Kenya, Mr. Speaker, having received that request from the UN, just like the other countries, Mr. Speaker, that is now when our Security Council was able to make this decision and bring the request to this House, Mr. Speaker. And so I think it is becoming very clear. Mr. Speaker, chapter 4 of this report, which is also important for members to note, Chapter 4, Mr. Speaker, deals with the issue of the legal framework. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we ought to comply with our constitution as we do what we do. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of article of our constitution, Mr. Speaker, requires that Parliament, both National Assembly and this House, Mr. Speaker, should be able to approve the deployment of our forces to Haiti. Mr. Speaker, this is what we mean by separation of power. If you allow the executive, Mr. Speaker, to do what they want to do, they can do those, Mr. Speaker, without the people's representatives, Mr. Speaker, are informed. And therefore, this House, Mr. Speaker, is playing a critical role, complying with Article 240, sub-article 8, sub-A, so that, Mr. Speaker, then we debate the merits, the demerits. Why? Is it viable? Is it okay? So that, Mr. Speaker, when we send our sons and daughters to Haiti, Mr. Speaker, it will have been done with approval of this House. Mr. Speaker, the serious issue that has arisen is who is going to meet expenses of the deployment of our forces there. Will the Kenyan resources be applied? Mr. Speaker, I want to inform the House and the country that, Mr. Speaker, from the presentation of the CS, it is clear, Mr. Speaker, that no single coin from our resources, Mr. Speaker, will be applied either in the training, in paying salaries, in medical expenses, in the insurances for the forces, and every other element of expenditure, Mr. Speaker, will actually be borne by the United Nations. Mr. Speaker, that is a very fundamental issue here because, Mr. Speaker, it is not the Kenyan government funding that particular issue, Mr. Speaker. It is very important. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is respected member of the international community and is under obligation to abide by its international commitments. The United Nations Security Council 2699, Mr. Speaker, approves Kenya as the MSS lead nation. Mr. Speaker, there are many countries in the world that is going to provide the forces to Haiti, Mr. Speaker. And I'm proud as a Kenyan, as a leader of this country, that, Mr. Speaker, Kenya, as was approved by the Security Council, Mr. Speaker, as the lead country in this particular mission, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that speaks to many things. That this country is respected, Mr. Speaker, that this country has the confidence, that we have the expertise, Mr. Speaker, that we have forces, that is discipline, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, let me say at this point that this is not the first time you are, Mr. Speaker, availing forces for security missions across the globe. It has been done before, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy that our country, Mr. Speaker, has been recognized to lead this particular mission, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the question that arises is, what are the expectations? What is expected of Kenya, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, our police will help in capacity building of the Haiti National Police. They will also help investigations, information, intelligence sharing, conducting intelligence-led operations, and expertise on joint operations within Haiti. Mr. Speaker, as we provide that capacity, it's going to help the police in Haiti, Mr. Speaker, to begin to restore peace and order in their country. Mr. Speaker, the MSS mission to succeed is strong alliances and partnerships within the immediate regions and beyond are vital. There was need to ensure that the necessary support and cooperation, Mr. Speaker, were put in place. Mr. Speaker, it is not important for us to also realize that Kenya is not the only country. We have many other countries, Mr. Speaker, which is going to do so. The other, Mr. Speaker, is that Kenya's role in the mission was essential, as it was a clear demonstration of the commitment to peace, readiness to act, and unwavering solidarity with the global family. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to know that Kenya is not a country in isolation. We are part of the international community, Mr. Speaker. In the region, we are a leading country in terms of peace mission. And Mr. Speaker, I think it is important for us as a House to realize, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me at this point to say something that arose during our meetings, Mr. Speaker, with the committee. The issue which was raised by Honorable Sifuna here about the principle of subsidies. And Mr. Speaker, we had a long discussion as a committee on this particular issue. It is important for me, Chair, and Mr. Speaker, as I move this motion, to also share my thoughts and that of the committee about this issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of subsidies rule, I know you are a legal mind just like the rest of the lawyers here, Mr. Speaker, is always a self-imposed is exercised, Mr. Speaker, subject to the discretion of the Speaker, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to read a section of a ruling that was given by your brother, Speaker Marende, ruling on the reappointment of Justice Ringera as the KACC director at that time. Mr. Speaker, I was in that house, the National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, the Speaker held as follows, and let me, Mr. Speaker, read. I quote, this is what this is what Speaker Marende said, and I quote, I am clear in my mind that in a matter of immense public interest, where there is a doubt, unless sound grounds are advanced. A presumption should exist in favor of allowing debate in the House as opposed to the application of sub judice rule is to suppress debate. I am also clear in my mind that it is not consistent with the purposes of which Parliament are established, that at a time of intense public concern over a matter calling into question important constitutional principles and the legitimate interplay between the executive and legislature on that appointment of the person to superintend the anti-corruption machinery in the country. This House should be the only place in Kenya. This House should be the only place in Kenya where the matter cannot be debated. If, however, Mr. Speaker, I emphasize that, if, however, in the course of debate, if, however, in the course of debate, it should become clear that any member is clearly foraying into a domain outside what is legitimately the province of this House, it will still remain open for the chair speaker to call them back to order. Mr. Speaker, that's what we have done today. You have been able to look at the standing orders, 105, and it is clear in your mind, Mr. Speaker, that where it is not clear by a member to stop debate in this matter, Mr. Speaker, you are able to call that member to order. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this is really what it is. Mr. Speaker, what is before the House is not the deployment, Mr. Speaker. It is the approval for deployment. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is good to distinguish that. I know deployment is preceded by approval by this House, Mr. Speaker. It is not for us to deploy. It is for us to approve the deployment. Mr. Speaker, deployment will be done by the executive. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that there is merit for us as a country to join the other nations in participating in the mission work in Haiti so that you bring order to that country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, let me say now that in light of the foregoing, I beg to move that taking into consideration the findings of the National Assembly Department Committee and Administration and Internal Security and Senate Standing Committee on Security, Defense and Foreign Relations in their report on consideration of the request for the approval by Parliament of the deployment of officers of National Police Service to multinational security support MSS mission for Haiti, pursuant to Article 280, Sub-Article 8A of the Constitution, and laid on the table of the House on 15th Wednesday 2023, Mr. Speaker, and the committee having reviewed the Kenya's obligation to the UN, the existing legal framework, submissions received by the public and relevant stakeholders, recommend that Parliament adopts the report of the National Assembly Department Committee on Administration and Internal Security and the Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations, and approves their proposed deployment of officers of the National Police Service to the multinational security mission support for Haiti, pursuant to Article 280, Sub-Article 2 of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move. You see, Mr. Speaker, I was to stop and then I called the second. Mr. Speaker, I want to request my colleague, who is a member of the committee, Mr. Speaker, to second.
Very well. Before you move, Senator Mazayo, I've watched you repeatedly holding Senator Joyce. You can consult, but please do not extend your hands to your colleagues, please. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the report of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security, and the Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations on the deployment of 1,000 officers of the National Police Service to the Multinational Security Support MSS mission to Haiti. Mr. Speaker, sir, the obligation placed on this country by virtue of its membership under to the body of the United Nations under Article 43 of the UN Charter cannot be gainsaid, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, our obligation as a member of the international family creates obligations under international law. And it is in keeping with that obligation, Mr. Speaker, sir, that under Article 2, 5, and 6 of the Constitution, this country, or the people of this country, found it necessary to ensure that the framework of our Constitution recognizes membership to international organizations and the application of treaties and other obligations, Mr. Speaker, sir, as forming part of the Constitution of this country. And it is in line with that obligation, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this country had to rise to the occasion to be the lead country in, Mr. Speaker, sir, implementing the international obligation to provide a peacekeeping force to the nation of Haiti upon a request by the UN Security Council, but Mr. Speaker, sir, further, upon a formal request by the nation of Haiti to this country and the compliance with the processes. Mr. Speaker, sir, having confirmed that all the other necessary public consultations and participation have been complied with, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee has met severally and received submissions from stakeholders, but foremost, Mr. Speaker, sir, from the Cabinet Secretary of Interior and National Administration, the Inspector General of the National Police, and affirmed, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this country has the capacity to deploy the police, the security that is required, Mr. Speaker, sir, as set out, Mr. Speaker, sir. And as I second this motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important to underline that in the deployment of the 1,000 forces to Haiti, we shall deploy senior officers, including a mission commander, a chief of operations officer, a chief of staff, a logistics officer, 96 personnel, but most importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, 655 constables who shall not only provide training and guidance and capacity building to the police in Haiti, but that will work with the police to ensure that the restoration of national peace in Haiti is undertaken. Mr. Speaker, sir, this House is alive to the fact that Haiti has a fair extraction of its citizenry from Africa. This House is also alive to the fact that Haiti has had a checkered history, not only, Mr. Speaker, sir, of coup d'etats, but also of sporadic violence. And it is in keeping with our obligation as a peace-loving country and in keeping with the experience that our police force has, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this country has agreed to be part of the international duty to ensure that we restore peace in Haiti. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am also alive to the fact that Haiti has a Francophone background, given its colonial history. But I'm also
Order,
alive
Senator Marango.
to the
May the senator be heard in
preparedness
silence, please.
to the preparedness of our forces to undertake the very important duty of maintaining peace in Haiti, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee report was adopted with only a minority dissent from one member of the National Assembly. But that does not mean, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this report is not without support from all the members of the committee. I strongly second the report by the chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, and it is time, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this country is recognized as one of the lead countries in the community of nations in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Boni, take your seat. Now, Senator Mazai, you may proceed to your seat. You are fairly busy this afternoon, Senator Mazai. Thank you. Now, honorable senators, before I propose the question, I had a pending ruling to deliver, so allow me to deliver that. Then we proceed with the question. Honorable senators, as you may recall, at the sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, 14th November 2023, several senators rose on points of order pursuant to Standing Order 1051 to require the Senator for Nairobi City County, Senator Edwin Sifuna, to substantiate statements made in the course of debate. The utterances by Senator Edwin Sifuna MP were made while the senator was making his contribution on the motion for the President's address to Parliament pursuant to Article 132(1)(c) and 247 of the Constitution. The particulars of the statements that Senator Sifuna was required to substantiate are as follows. A. Senator Mohamed Chute MP sought the intervention of the Speaker to require Senator Edwin Sifuna MP to substantiate the statement that, Mr. Speaker, sir, we were told about the question of subsidizing the price of fertilizers. Now it is public record that in fact some of these subsidized fertilizers came to this country as a donation from the government of Russia. B. Senator Dr. Boni Kalwale MP sought the intervention of the Speaker to require Senator Edwin Sifuna MP to substantiate the statement that, Mr. Speaker, sir, the President also announced that in June of this year, his administration would employ 103 community health promoters, CHPs. We saw him flagging off distribution of 100,000 kits to be used by those people. The fact of the matter is that is not true. In fact, counties are supposed to identify the people to be recruited as CHPs, and that progress is ongoing. You cannot claim something has happened, yet it has not happened just to massage the numbers and appear like your government is working. C. Senator Veronica Maina MP saw the intervention of the Speaker to require Senator Edwin Sifuna MP to substantiate the statement that we were told that the President has set up Wi-Fi hotspots across the country, including here in Nairobi County, and markets such as Muthurwa and City Market. You will see that, in fact, those things do not work. And C, secondly, the Central Bank of Kenya data allows, the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK data shows that the default rate of the loans borrowed under the Hustler Fund is higher than the ones of the commercial banks. Now, Honorable Senator, Standing Order 1051 states as follows: a senator shall be responsible for the accuracy of any facts that the senator alleges to be true and may be required to substantiate any facts instantly. Further, Standing Order 1052 states as follows: if a senator has sufficient reason to convince the Speaker that the senator is unable to substantiate the allegation instantly, the Speaker shall require the senator to substantiate the allegations not later than the next sitting day, failure to which the senator shall be deemed to be disorderly within the meaning of Standing Order 121, unless the senator withdraws the allegations and gives a suitable apology. Senator Edwin Sifuna was not able to substantiate his statements as required pursuant to Standing Order 1051, and subsequently requested to be allowed by the Speaker to provide the evidence the next sitting day in accordance with the Standing Order 1052. Having acceded to the request, the Speaker directed that the Senator substantiate his allegations at the next sitting day. On Wednesday, 15th November 2023, I consequently invited Senator Edwin Sifuna MP to table the evidence in support of his statements made on Tuesday, 14th November 2023, pursuant to Standing Order 1052. Thereupon, having no evidence to substantiate the point of order by Senator Veronica Maina with respect to the Wi-Fi hotspots across the country, Senator Edwin Sifuna withdrew the statement and offered an apology to the Senate. The Senator thereafter proceeded to table documents containing the evidence on the following: A, the point of order raised by Senator Mohammed Chute MP concerning the subsidized fertilizer, and B, the point of order raised by Senator Veronica Maina MP concerning the default rate for the loans borrowed under the Hustler Fund. Honorable Senators, following the tabling of evidence by Senator Edwin Sifuna, I undertook to review the documents and give a ruling on the matter, as it was not practical to make a determination then. As you're aware, any document or evidence tabled by a senator in this House as evidence for substantiation of any allegations made under Standing Order 105 must pass a certain threshold. The obligation on the Speaker in this matter was to review the documents tabled by Senator Edwin Sifuna MP, make a determination on the admissibility, further establish whether the documents, if admissible, provide evidence of the claims made, and to finally make a determination whether accordingly the threshold under Standing Order 105 has been met. Consequently, in undertaking the foregoing assessment, the parameters that have guided the Speaker in the present matter are as follows. A, is the evidence tabled from a source which by parliamentary practice is official and admissible? And two, if the answer to A is in the affirmative, does the evidence relate and verify the claim that was made and for which substantiation was required? Now, honorable senators, with respect to the first parameter, which is whether the evidence provided is from a source which by parliamentary practice is official and admissible, a review of the contents of the documents provided by Senator Sifuna indicates that the senator tabled the following documents. One, a copy of an image of a post on the Russian embassy in Kenya's social media X, formerly Twitter, dated 3rd August 2023, and a copy of an article from the Standard newspaper dated 1st June 2023, indicating that the government of Kenya had received 34 tons of fertilizer from the Russian government. Two, a copy of an undated article from the Star newspaper indicating that the average rate of birth date in Kenya had hit an almost 2 decades high of 15%. And three, a copy of an article from the Business Daily newspaper dated 22nd August 2023, indicating that the Hustler Fund defaults had reached 3 billion in 9 months. And lastly, the annual report and financial statement of Central Bank of Kenya for the financial year 2022-2023. Now, honorable senators, as you are aware, established practice in Parliament of Kenya and in comparative jurisdictions is that extracts from newspapers may not be tabled as evidence for substantiation of claims. This is buttressed at Standing Orders 55.1, which in respect to statements provide, and I quote, the facts on which a request for statements is based may be set briefly, but extracts from newspaper and other media or quotations from speeches shall not be admissible. Consequently, and in accordance with the established parliamentary practice, the newspaper extracts from the Standard, the Star, and the Business Daily newspapers as tabled by Senator Edwin Sifuna MP are inadmissible for purposes of substantiating any claim made. The other document tabled was a copy of an image of a post on the Russian embassy in Kenya's social media platform X, formerly Twitter. This document appears to be an image taken of the verified official X account of the Russian embassy in Kenya, posted at 8:07 hours on the 3rd of August 2023. There is no evidence to suggest the contrary, and this document is accordingly admissible. The final document tabled was the annual report on financial statements of Central Bank of Kenya for the financial year 2020-2023. This is an official publication of a government agency and is therefore admissible. Honorable Senators, the second parameter is whether the evidence table relates to and verifies the claim that was made and for which substantiation was required. With respect to the copy of an image of a post on the Russian embassy in Kenya's social media platform X, the senator tabled this document seeking to substantiate the following statement. Mr. Speaker, sir, we were told about the question of subsidizing the price of fertilizers. Now it is public record that in fact some of these subsidized fertilizers came to this country as a donation from the government of Russia. The post from the Russian Embassy X platform states as follows. More than 34 tons of fertilizer donated to Kenya by the Russian Uralkali group are now being reformulated to produce 100,000 and 200 tons of fertilizer. This will help Kenya a lot to get a good harvest this year. Now, honorable senators, while it is clear that there was a donation of fertilizer from the Russian government to Kenya, no nexus is shown between that donation referred to and the subsidized fertilizer as alleged by Senator Sifuna. To meet the test of substantiation, Senator Sifuna needed to show the link between the donation and the subsidized fertilizer. He has not. The final document tabled was the annual report and financial statement of the Central Bank of Kenya for financial year 2020-2023. This document indicates the financial position and performance of the banking industry in Kenya. It was presumably presented to buttress the contents of the newspaper articles in support of the allegation that the default rate of the Hustler Fund was higher than that of the commercial banks. Needless to say, the purported substantiation by use of newspaper articles having been disallowed, this supporting document similarly collapses. In any case, I see no connection, no reference made to the Hustler Fund, and any comparison between the Hustler Fund and the regular commercial lenders in the central bank report. Honorable Senators, accordingly, I find and rule as follows. In respect of the challenge by Senator Mohamed Chute, MP, to substantiate the claim relating to fertilizer, Senator Edwin Sifuna, MP, has tabled evidence to show that indeed some fertilizer was donated to this country, but has failed to establish any link between that donation and the subsidized fertilizer. Therefore, this claim has not been substantiated. In respect to the challenge by Dr. Boni Halwale, MP, to substantiate the claim that it is not true that the government had employed one of three community health promoters, CHPS, Senator Sifuna did not table any evidence or provide any explanation to substantiate this claim as was required. The claim was accordingly not substantiated. In respect to the challenge by Senator Veronica Maina, MP, to substantiate the statement that default rates of the loans borrowed under the Hustler Fund are higher than the ones of the commercial banks, again, Senator Sifuna did not table evidence to support this claim. The claim was accordingly not substantiated. Now, honorable senators, following the tabling of the documents by Senator Edwin Sifuna, MP, and in accordance with my findings in relation to the admissibility or otherwise of these documents, and the failure to meet the threshold of substantiation in respect to the claims made, I now require Senator Edwin Sifuna, pursuant to Standing Order 1052, to withdraw and apologize in respect of the claims that, one, some of the subsidized fertilizer came into the country as a donation from the government of Russia. B, it was not true that the government had employed 103 community health promoters, CPH. And finally, the default rates of the loans borrowed under the Hustler Fund are higher than the ones of the commercial banks. I proceed to caution, as provided in Standing Order 1052, that failure to withdraw and apologize will result in Senator Edwin Sifuna being deemed to be disorderly within the meaning of Standing Order 121. Senator Sifuna. Senator Sifuna.
Mr. Speaker, this is a hill that I am determined to die on. My conviction is right. My conscience is clear. I refuse to withdraw or apologize for any of those sentiments because they are the truth. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to see myself out in lines of Standing Order 121 2B. You don't need to bother yourself. I'll just walk out.
Kindly proceed.
Thank you, sir.
Order, honorable senators. Now I proceed to propose the question. What is your point of clarification, Senator?
Thank you so much, Speaker, for allowing me an opportunity just to understand a little bit further from your communication. I believe you referenced Standing Order 55 in terms of the types of evidence that is admissible, and you mentioned media, extract, and the like, and you also mentioned speeches, I believe. If that is correct, Speaker, and if I heard you correctly, the clarification I seek from you is anchored on the debate that's been happening on the 2 days. There are some honorable members who used the speech, the data that was found in the speech that was being debated as part of their submissions and part of their evidence and to support the debate. And those were admissible even after a couple of points of order. And I wondered what types of speeches, if you can clarify for me, Speaker, are admissible and what types of speeches are not admissible. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Asige. Of course, the speech that was being debated here is the speech that was done in Parliament. And therefore, there is no way we could have proceeded with the motion without the speech. The speeches that are being contemplated under our standing order are speeches that are made outside the floor of this House. Speeches that are made in social gatherings that have no bearing whatsoever with the proceedings of the House. For example, if this weekend you proceed to your rural home and there's a social gathering and somebody rises to make a speech, you cannot then take that speech or you cannot quote that speech as evidence to buttress your claim before this House. That is the distinction between the speech that we're debating and the speeches that are inadmissible before this House. So allow me to, yes.
Mr. Speaker, I would appreciate if you could clarify. Under Standing Order number 122, gross disorderly conduct, 1E, deliberately gives false information to the Senate. And then, Mr. Speaker, sir, 122.2. If indeed, as you have ruled, it looks like the information that the Senator from Nairobi gave us, and from his language and attitude, it was deliberate, was not factual. Mr. Speaker, it therefore invites you under this standing order to clarify whether in asking the senator to leave the chamber, you are enforcing 122.2A, or you are enforcing 122.2B.
Senator Boni, the punishment for failure to substantiate is contained in Standing Order 105.2. That is where the punishment is prescribed for a senator who fails to substantiate. And it reads, if a senator has sufficient reason to convince the speaker that the senator is unable to substantiate the allegation instantly, the speaker shall require that such senator substantiate the allegations not later than the next sitting day, failure to which the senator shall be deemed to be disorderly within the meaning of Standing Order 121, not 122, 121, unless the senator withdraws the allegations and gives a suitable apology if the senator so requires. So the punishment for failure to substantiate is prescribed under Standing Order 105. And that is, you go to Standing Order 121.2, where the senator may caution or order the senator to withdraw from the presence of the Senate for the remainder of the day's sitting. That is the punishment for unable to substantiate. And that is exactly the punishment that I've meted against Senator Sifuna. He had to withdraw for the remainder of today's sitting as prescribed, as pursuant to Standing Order 105, 2, read together with 121, 2B. Lack of substantiation is not a gross disorderly conduct to attract a punishment under Standing Order 122. Yes, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I really thank you for that clarification. And further to your clarification, Mr. Speaker, for the record, because it's on record, the Speaker has ruled that yes, there was a donation of 34 metric tons of fertilizer from Russia. And that's a reference that Senator Sifuna made. And the Speaker has said that the only difference between what he said and what he was asked to substantiate is that he could not create a nexus between that donation and the fertilizer that was subsidized. So, Senator Alwale, as you itch to visit a lot more painful punishment on Sifuna, be informed. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, allow me to propose the question that taking into consideration the recommendations of the joint report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security of the National Assembly and the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations of the Senate regarding the proposed deployment of officers of the National Police Service to the Multinational Security Support MSS mission for Haiti, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 15 November 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 248A of the Constitution, the Senate approves the deployment of officers of the National Police Service to the Multinational Security Support MSS mission for Haiti. Honorable Senators, you may now proceed to make your intervention. What is your point of order? Under Senator Methu, the only time a senator rises on a point of order is when another senator is on their feet. So you may not have the platform on a point of order.
If I was to raise this point of order when another senator is already on his feet, then it would be...
So you're raising on a matter of procedure? Or
yes, Standing Order 111 on limitation of debate, Honorable Speaker, owing to the number of senators who want to comment on this particular motion, and you've seen the kind of business that we have today is very heavy, Honorable Speaker. I would wish to propose that we limit debate on this particular motion to 3 minutes per senator. I ask my brother Samson Cherargei, Senator, to second.
Your motion has no seconder. Now, honorable senators, a motion has been proposed that such a motion does not attract debate really. I will straight away proceed to put the question, which is that time be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, per senator standing to speak on this particular matter. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to say I oppose this motion for various reasons. Mr. Speaker, this motion is pegged on Article 240 of the Constitution, which says that the National Security Council, that is 248, the National Security Council may, with the approval of Parliament, B, approve the deployment of foreign forces, forces. Mr. Speaker, I think the committee conveniently did not consider the provision of Article 241(2), which defines the various category of defense forces and says that the defense forces consist of the Kenya Army, the Kenya Air Force, the Kenya Navy. In this case, Mr. Speaker, the National Police Service is not mentioned. So if you look at the constitutionality of this motion, it is unconstitutional. And I want to beg my colleagues, you may be rushing to approve this motion because of political interest. But we have lived in this country to know.
What is your point of order, Senator Cheriot?
Mr. Speaker, did you hear Senator Osotsi cast aspersion on the conduct of colleague senators?
Under what standing order?
Standing order 101, let me just be sure. Contents of speech, Mr. Speaker, 101(4). No senator shall impute improper motive to any senator or to member of the National Assembly, except on specific substantive motion of which at least 3 days notice has to be given, calling into question the conduct. Did you hear Senator Osotsi say that I know the senators are in a rush to approve this motion because of political considerations? Mr. Speaker, that is grossly inaccurate, and it pains the senators who are even yet first to contribute on this motion and is not sure whether they will support or oppose in bad light, Mr. Speaker. Would you kindly find him to be out of order and ask him to withdraw and apologize to his colleagues?
Senator Sotsi, your statement in this regard is in breach of Standing Order 101(4), and therefore
Mr. Speaker,
proceed to withdraw that particular.
Mr. Speaker, this is a house of debate. We
Senator
have
Osotsi,
listened to me talk.
Senator Osotsi, you are imputing improper motive, which is a breach
Mr.
of
Speaker,
Standing
I
Order
think if
101(4).
the Hansard will bear me witness. I said, and I want to challenge the production of the Hansard. I said,
Secretariat, can I have the Hansard here?
some of us could be, may be supporting this motion.
Can I have the
because of
Hansard, please?
And Mr. Speaker, this house should be guided by the Constitution. Article 117(1) is very clear that a House of Parliament must exercise freedom of speech. We are not going to be gagged in this house. Every time we stand up to debate, we are being told to substantiate on everything. Mr. Speaker, I've been elected by the people of Vihiga
Senator
to
Osotsi.
come and debate freely in this house.
Order,
not to be
order,
gagged.
senators. Order, honorable senators. Order, honorable senators. Senator Sotsi, you do not appear in the list of nominated senators. You need not remind people of an obvious thing. Of course, you're elected. A point of order has been raised. I need to rule on it. And for me to rule on it, I need to see the Hansard. Because what Senator Cheriot said, you're saying those are not of your words. So to get exactly what he said, I have to refer to the Hansard. And that is exactly what I'm waiting to see.